Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Alexander, what's our first question today?
First question this morning is coming from me, actually, in Port Coquitlam, BC. Modern high-budget TV shows have very inconsistent, unpredictable runtimes. Back in the day, a show was either 22 minutes or about 40 minutes before commercials. Some episodes now are 42, 52, or 60 minutes. What happened?
Alex?
Streaming. So the streaming is now, we used to have to fit into a very hard time budget. It was usually, my experience was usually mostly what we would say is 22 and 44 were the numbers that we were shooting for. We left the rest of the window open it had to be that exact number because they had sold and you would see slightly different ones on HBO. You would see this exactly what we're seeing today on HBO or PBS where they didn't have commercial breaks. They kind of just, HBO would be somewhere before 60 minutes, but it could be 52, it could be 58, it could be a lot of different numbers because they didn't need to worry about it. As streaming hit, it doesn't matter anymore. so we're not trying to insert ads in the same way that we did before. And so that's why it's changed.
Go ahead, Bill.
100% agree with Alex. The broadcasts used to be very strictly formatted, and they had those advertising avails, and they were locked in stone, and so everybody knew exactly when the breaks were coming. Now that over-the-top streaming, all the sub-channels, Hulu and everything like that are doing content, and they're buying old television shows, and there's no reason to have those advertising avail slots in there. I've noticed one thing. You can kind of tell at what era this show was sold, because they'll typically now fade to black and fade up out of black where the old ad insert used to be, and the length of that pause can kind of hint you as to what era the show was produced in. I find it kind of fascinating.
And it's so interesting that they don't have the same beats. Like before they would get you to like, oh, we're going to leave you at a little mini cliffhanger and we're going to get your emotions super high and then we're going to sell you something. And now that doesn't exist anymore. So the way that the show is structured in the show feels a little bit more natural. The interesting thing, though, is when you're not operating with the constraint, sometimes things get a little out of hand. Like it is amazing when you see a show that when it has to be in this rigid box, just like old software that could only run on a very limited set of hardware, or a TV show that has to be a certain amount of minutes. They have to make creative decisions around that. And there's a lot that I like about it, but sometimes things really drag on, and I'm just like, okay. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, to your point, CJ, that used to be writers, scoring people. Everybody used to have a rhythm that they were working to. First act was going to here, and then there was a commercial break. Second act, they had to write it inside of that. Now, those rules are far less rigid, and writers, performers, everybody involved in the creative process, top to bottom, can do things they weren't able to do when they had to work in those, 6-8 minute block before the first break and things like that. So the structure changes.
Oh, something, great power, great responsibility. Next question.
This one's from the QR code. Gene J. Anthony in Skokie, Illinois. Should we use oxybot or codelight for our projects?
Jonas?
I was hoping that Alex would figure out what we're talking about, because there is oxybot and codelight for development, but not really. And then there's two companies. I would say use whatever editor you're most comfortable with. Codelight seems fine. A lot of people also like to use VS Code or any of its derivatives. Yeah.
I was.
Go ahead, Alex.
The history behind this was that I had my hand up, and then Jonas raised his, and I was like, maybe he knows. And I was like, why should I answer the question when Jonas goes, well, actually, it's this, this, and this. So those are not super common, and either one of those is not something that you commonly see or I've ever seen. But I think that the overall answer for this question is, should I use X or Y for Z, which is, should I use this product or this product for my project? And the answer is, of course, it depends. Like, what is the project, and what does it need to do, and how does it need to work, and what are the key aspects of it, and what resources do you have access to? So to answer those questions, you kind of have to think through those things, and that is a generalized answer for this, because we don't know. I'm not familiar with oxybot or codelight, so I would argue that you may not want to use one of those, but because none of us know what it is. But I think that but the overall answer for anything is that what the product is. Like, I can buy a pickup truck, but that may not be what I need on a day-to-day basis, or I might buy a little Chevette and I really should have bought a pickup truck. And you just need to decide what are you going to do with the vehicle and then make a decision about what you're going to buy.
Next question.
This one's for me. Can anyone recommend a good 16 battery capacity charger? Must fit AA, AAA, and charge without matched pairs.
Jonas?
So at IBC, if you walked up to the Elgato booth and then turned around, there was this really interesting company called Clever. They're producing the Charger Pro. And it's a rack-mountable AA and a AAA battery charger, up to 48. So might be overshooting what you want just a little bit, but they're built for the event production industry. And what's also cool is you have all your power inputs there, but you also have Ethernet. So what you can do is you can get some information about what you need. It will show you when it's ready. You get a Clever control, which is your interface where you can see which battery is how far. And you can, of course, also use their batteries.
Pretty clever. Bill?
Yeah, this has changed so much. We used to have a couple of kinds of rechargeables, mostly NiCad. Now there's so many new chemistries. I mean, I was just looking at a table of lithium copper oxide, lithium ion disulfide, lithium manganese dioxide. I mean, they're doing so much research and trying to pack power into these things that I think the safest thing is to figure out what kind of batteries you use, try to standardize them, and try to get the chargers that are specifically designed for those, because each of these battery chemistries has different capacities, different paths of recharging. Sometimes they want full discharge and recharge. Sometimes you can top off batteries that are half charged. Sometimes they need to go through recycled things. I mean, look at the complexity of iPhone rechargers and things like that. Half the time it allows me to put it on, but every once in a while it says, look, I got to take this all the way down to the bottom, so leave it in for 6 hours as we recycle the entire charge profile of the battery. So it's not as simple as it used to be, and that's my recommendation. Pick a brand, a charger that works with that brand that you know is solid for it, and stick with what you know.
I'm kind of with Bill here. The rechargeables are always this wild west of, I think that it's going to do what it says it's going to do, but I worry when it matters because it still feels like kind of a guess. And short of Alex's method of using them for a show and then they're in the bulk bin for next time for new batteries, I really have come to like, now that everything recharges with a USB-C, I've got what now feels like an army of those 737 like just power banks from Anker or Small Rig 99 or something like that. I mounted a camera somewhere that I couldn't get power to just to do an extended time lapse. I took 6 of those and I just daisy chained them. And there's this massive like battery bank that's slid into a cantilever rack. And then there's a time the thing ran for a week. It was amazing. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, and this doesn't fulfill what you were looking at. I just have this little box because I wanted to have something I can throw in my bag, and this only does 8, but it does 8 AAs for the stuff that I have that AAs. This is just like a bat zone, but it's USB powered, and you can just throw them in, and they've got little lights on the top when you're charging. so it tells you if they're charging, if they're not charging, if they're whatever. And I've had a lot of battery chargers, and that's become my favorite one in the last 20 years. Is just having some little box that I can throw in my bag. It holds them there. If I need to recharge them somewhere, it's not some kind of, I think trying to do too many things at one time might be hard too.
Next question.
This one's from Pedro G. Gonzalez in Washington, D.C. Trying to reduce the number of camera operators and mix in some PTZs. Picture quality and low light capability are priority. What are your sub $2,500 camera recommendations, sub $2,000 recommendations?
Jonas?
I think, sadly, this is one of those typical you can pick two, like cheap, great picture quality, PTZ. Like, I will say it's probably fine to hard to find something like that. But if you track back to your original goal of helping you achieve more with the same amount of camera operators really like it if you spin it this way and not say you want to replace them. What you can do is I would think about what additional static shots can you do? What additional shots could you maybe have two cameras and have one person like kind of closely follow them? But then if you really want to get something that has a bit of motion control, I do like the Canon CRN 300. That's one of the cheaper models from Canon. I find it pretty good. That being said, the other alternative is you buy an APCR Mini and do a little bit of a home build solution. So what you would do there is you buy a DJI RS3 or RS2, and then you can put any box camera or small camera that you like on there. So you could put a Sony camera, a BGH1, a UB10, which is the newer BGH1 version, on there. And then you put this little device on there. It then uses PoE. It then uses the Ethernet and can receive commands that way. And you have a fully featured PD set control that way. The amazing thing with that is you will get some of the best motion for the price point, because we're talking about less than $1,000 to get this motion control rig. And at that price point, I haven't seen anything have this great motion. And what's really neat is that they are built for filmmakers. They aren't built by security camera manufacturers now needing to auto track something. And you can really tell if you use, they have a Raven Eye module, which then allows you to do optical tracking on your camera output. And that works really well. If you use a BGH1, you don't even need that. You can pull over USB-C. It pulls the data from your auto focus detection and tracks based off that. But what's really cool is it allows you to give this work together with the machine, where you position where the subject should be in the frame. So maybe you want them on 2/3, maybe you want them in the middle, maybe you want less headroom, more headroom, and then it will try to compete, trying to keep that composition with the subject moving. And I've had really great success putting that in the back of the church and having a long lens and trying to follow the pastor as he's pacing around for the super source and things like that. It works really well for that. And I think for the price, you will be hard to find something better. That being said, if you only need to move it and you don't want to do on-air moves, the Beepo PT heads, they're like $200 and you control them over a serial cable. They are not for on-air moves at all. You can do like left, right, up, down. You don't have any precisions, but that's one of the cheapest way that we've also used if you just need to like reposition a camera a little bit.
Alex?
Yeah, I agree with Jonas that it's really hard in that price point to get great image quality, and especially low light. A lot of those are going to be smaller. The best low light camera, or very close to the best low light camera, is actually this one here. You can get this one for $1,300. We'll explain this in a second. In eBay, they're normally $5,000 each, but you can probably find some a little less. Most of them seem to be at $3,200, so there might be something wrong with this one. But this is a Canon ME200. I used to have a kit of those for low light shows. So if the show came in low light, we had 4 of these that we would use. I believe that the ISO on this goes up to 1 million, and it runs about. It looks pretty grainless up to 40 or 50,000. So it is a full. This is a Super 35 sensor with that's only 1080p, so that the photo sites are a lot larger. There's an ME20, which is the larger version of this, which is a full frame sensor that's only 1080p, and its ISO goes up to I think 3.5 million. And we had issues where we were shooting We were shooting. We had somebody sending us a remote feed from Tanzania, and there were hyenas right in front of them, and they couldn't see them, but we could see them very clearly. We were like, "You need to get back in the truck," and they're like, "What's going on?" And like, "You need to get back in. Like, we can see that through your camera things that you can't see with your eyes, and you need to get back in the truck." And so they're incredible for low light in that area. Also, yesterday the DJI RS4 Mini was just released. You want to watch the video; it's pretty impressive. This is this is an optical this little camera that attaches to it that allows it to do all the auto tracking that it wants to do and feeds directly back into the headset. And some of the tracking on it was pretty insane from the video. We haven't tested it yet. Also, bird dogs are probably low light and image quality may not be perfect on these, but they're about $2,000. One thing to remember is that whatever you do is you start to say, well, I want to have PTZs. You really need to think about having the whole sensor be the same. You're going to have a hard time matching the look and feel of each camera if you're not running them all. If you don't have a PTZ, so a PTZ head, kind of what Jonas was talking about there, and there's lots of different ones. That works better because you take the same camera. So we use telemetrics heads a lot. So we've had Blackmagic cameras or Aries or lots of other things. We put them on those heads. When we go smaller than the telemetrics heads, we've typically used the Sony FR7s mixed with FX6s because they're the same chip, and even then the color science isn't perfectly matched between the two, but it's very, very close. And so, and of course the FR7s will give you incredible low light and very good image quality, but they're just a little above the price point that you laid out in this question.
Next question.
Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina, need to shoot some basic B-roll next week. Is something like the Osmo Mobile 7 decent?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, it works. I have been using Osmo since Osmo 1, and I have been shooting B-roll for opens and closes of shows to just kind of mix into things with my iPhones for a very, very, very long time. And so the only place that I find that it doesn't work very well is sticking out of a car because the phone turns into a sail and it makes it very unstable very quickly. It doesn't you don't have to go very far. So as long as you're staying inside of the window and you're not getting the wind, I find that these things, we shoot all kinds of things. We do walk around things and shoot other bits and pieces, and it's worked very well. We had an issue with our camera, or our whole camera system at one point for a very large show, and ended up running out with one of these to capture the red carpet we just needed a executive walking through, and we captured all of that and plugged it all in. And the director just said, "Hey, how do we get that? I thought all the cameras were down." And we were like, "Oh, we got it with the phone." And he was very upset that we didn't tell him, but he couldn't tell the difference in the broadcast, looking at the big broadcast there. So, and that was 10 years ago, so the image quality on the cameras has gone through the roof, and the quality of the movement on the Osmo has gone through the roof. I wouldn't shoot a whole TV show with it or a film or whatever. I think people who sell it as that is probably too much. But grabbing some B-roll for to cut into things and to be part of your broadcast, I think you'll find, especially with an iPhone that's shooting ProRes that can shoot log, you'll have a lot of room to build something that looks pretty good.
Bill?
I agree. The answer is probably you're going to be just fine. The things that I would watch out for is if you're just doing static shots, if you're setting up somewhere and framing a shot and capturing it, you're going to be almost undoubtedly just fine. The only time that I would want to run a test to make sure I'm okay is if I had something like a shot that starts outside and moves inside, because then you're dealing with changing lighting conditions and things like that, and you have to just look at it and say, does the automatic reaction on these model things equate to what I want to take in and use as my final? And it also has to do with what you're shooting, the main part. You're saying this is B-roll, so obviously there's a camera involved for the original. Just make sure, I'd run one test to make sure that those kind of shots, if they're on my shot list, can be executed by this camera and its operator successfully, so I don't have to lose shots because of that. But I think you're going to be fine.
Jonas?
I would say it depends on the camera that you're using. You might still find for B-roll, if you're not the one who's editing it, and let's say you use it for a customer story or something like that, I found you need a lot more And what people tend to do with a gimbal is they do these cool move in and move out shots and like panning left to right and slow movement. And then you realize you have this perfect shot. It still tells the story. And then it's over before like the most important point just hits. The other thing I'll say is I've been really liking the DJI Osmo Pocket. And the reason why I like this is I now don't have to think about my phone. I don't have to think about bringing something else. It even has interchangeable lenses. And it is a separate device that I can just hand over to someone and be like, hey, here, can you shoot this for me real quick? Or you put it down somewhere. You can still do things on your phone. I found that all of the solutions that use your phone to record end up having issues for longer day shoots because at some point you're like, oh, can I? Sorry, I have to get my phone back. I have to check this real quick or do this and that. That's where I like the Pocket 3 a lot.
Bill?
Just to riff on what Jonas said, because he's absolutely right. Remember, the camera isn't shooting the footage. The person operating the camera is shooting the footage. And as long as that is solid, the cameras will all be great, probably.
And I pulled out an older one just to, as a quick demo. When you get this, you want to practice. I have one of the 6s, but it's at the office. So this, I think, is a 3. Just out of the box, it's going to do these follows, and it's going to be nice. But what you want to do is practice all of the little gestures with the controls, because there are things that you can do, like if you hold down the trigger, all of a sudden the phone is going to try to stay in place while you are moving around it. So as you're getting into a challenging situation, the sooner that you can move all of those operator things into a lower brain and have it be muscle memory, that'll allow you to focus on really making the best shoot. Your question votes drive the show, by the way, so remember to use Makana to chat, ask questions, and vote. If you don't have access, remember you can always sign up at officehours.global/join, and then you'll get an email with links on how to get into Makana, how to get into Discord, all the good stuff. Next question.
This was from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. Reposting from Tuesday, Network Chuck built a local AI cluster from 5 Mac studios. He compares connecting them over 10G Ethernet or using Thunderbolt. What is the best way to network multiple Macs using Thunderbolt?
Jason?
Here's the thing about this. The answer comes up to, that's right, it depends. It depends on the number of Macs that you're actually wanting to incorporate. So, in general, these are the ways to do it. You can daisy chain. Number 2 is basically 10 gigabit Ethernet with a switch, a 10 gigabit switch. Number 3 would be a docking station or a Thunderbolt hub protocol. And then number 4 is basically just daisy chaining all the way down. And what you find is you will get a very diminishing return pretty quickly for overall availability as the number increases. So 5 is a strange number to pull on this because very quickly Ethernet will take over. That said, there are all sorts of little tricks that can also change that.
Next question.
From the QR code, Gene J. Anthony in Skokie, Illinois. What NAS will work with our remote cameras and security systems so we can preview and also broadcast streams for events?
Jonas?
Since you're saying you want to preview and broadcast streams, keep in mind a NAS most of the time is built for file-based workflows. So Blackmagic right now kind of is the leader on cameras that can automatically upload and send pictures to something that is in Frame.io Cloud. There's this whole camera to cloud thing that still exists, but that's in the higher tier. What I would make sure is, since you're saying remote, how are you connecting to the remote? If you use any, like for example, I have a Synology. If you use that and you use one of those that has compute built in, so you can use Docker containers or something like that, I would recommend using Restreamer. It's a free Docker container that you can put on there. And then you can use that to pull in SRT, RTMP, or local sources, record them, or also forward them to other events and have a Restreamer that way. That being said, I wouldn't personally want to put that on my NAS, but if that's the only compute device you have, that might work for you. Otherwise, the Blackmagic Cloud Pod and Cloud Stores might be a good answer for you if you are in the Blackmagic ecosystem. A lot of their cameras do still require you to use Blackmagic Cloud to do the initial file transfer. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then if you want to do growing records, it depends on the protocol. You will need a recorder that can take the camera stream and write growing files to the drive. And then your editors can start editing that. That being said, growing files is not something that you easily can use for restreaming. So that's really where you need to stay in the streaming world and not go down to files. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also a little unclear on exactly how it would get put together. It's a little bit of an art project because it's not really what it was designed to do. However, if you do find a pipeline that works, remember to think about your throughput. Your NAS is probably going to come all with 1 gig NICs as default. Some of the Synologies have the place where you can put in a 10 gig slot, and then that's going to give you a lot more highway for those bits to drive down. Next question.
This one comes from Ronny Hofsøy from Tromsø, Norway. Trying to MIDI control an Allen Heath CQ12 1820 using Bitfocus Companion's generic MIDI module. Making sense of numbers and values in the MIDI docs is not for me. Please help.
Ronnie, throw a little more context for us.
Yeah, my head is obviously not elastic enough to understand either the documentation or how to do it. Just to show a little bit more, this is the documentation I'm looking at, and the numbers that are shown here as examples for soft. So what I'm trying first now is to just use the MIDI to control the soft button mutes, and the numbers that are shown here and in this next table, this is for documentation for those that are reviewing this afterwards, does not make sense for me in any way when I take a look at what I'm learning inside Bitfocus Companion. As you can see here, the learning for the mute function of the soft button is first channel 1 controller 99 with a value of 4. I think that is just to define the value, and value is probably just release that function. The second one is needed to be a part of the actions, or else it will fail. It probably will remember the channel. And here there is a value of 2, which I think is the address of the third button, which starts, the array starts at 0. So it's 0, 1, and 2, which is 1, 2, and 3. And this is soft button 3 we're talking about. And then I have another action, which is still on channel 1. It's a controller and a value of 0. And the last one is still channel 1, controller 38, and a value of 1. And I am not able to find these numbers even when I try to correspond them in the table of the hex values. So I'm not understanding nothing. Anyone helping?
Go ahead, Alexander.
I haven't actually tried to do this because I've spent very little time with that mixer, but I just looked, and there is an Allen Heath module for Companion, an official one that would probably be a lot easier. And it says, yeah, it's got pre-configured buttons to mute, unmute channels and access a lot more functionality. Have you tried the module for the CQ series?
Where did you find that?
Best way to block a punch is not to be there.
I just typed in Allen and just the keyword Allen, and the first option is Allen Heath CQ series module. So there is one that would probably make your life a lot easier. Just type in the IP address of the console.
I find the SQ, the D-Live, the Avantis, and the QU, not the CQ. Which version of Bitfocus do you use?
I'm using 3.5.2, the latest version, but it does so. There's multiple Allen Heath modules. I see the CQ series and the SQ series and the D-Live module. They're all there.
Maybe
Go ahead,
this
Jonas.
is just a version of the Bitfocus problem.
So what I'll say, Ronnie, it looks like you are sending CC messages and looking at the documentation. For example, for scene changes, it needs a bank change followed by a program change. That is a different type of Midi message. So I think that's probably where you're running into an issue. Mickey posted in chat a great tool that you can use to see the Midi messages that it sends. I use like something like Midi Monitor, and then you can just look at what it's sending. One thing to possibly also keep in mind is that there's often two modes on controllers like that. One where it sends MIDI to controller DA, and then another mode where like it can receive MIDI and can be controlled by that. But yeah, if you look at your controls, it says that like for soft keys, it uses on node, off node commands instead of CC commands. And I think I saw in Companion, you're only using control change commands. So that's probably the issue, because with control change, you have too many parameters compared to that.
Next question.
I'll have to look into that.
This one's from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Could it be possible that a vMix preset is spiking the CPU due to the large number of inputs, even if Task Manager is showing low vMix CPU usage?
Jonas?
Yes. And what's really important is consider how CPU usage is being measured and calculated. Some use like what is the overall CPU usage, but if one core is at 100% and the rest isn't, then you're also running into an issue. If we look at vMix, what you want to look at is down here, the render time. This is how long does it take for vMix to produce a frame. So like if you have a too high render time, it can't keep up with the clock that needs it to output frames. The other thing is, if you go into the statistics here, you should see where like it drops frames. That can be an issue. And then in the latest version, they also added encoders. And what's to note there is that it might not look like vMix is using your CPU usage, but if you actually look at the processes within Task Manager, that might not tell the whole story if you're only looking at vMix, because vMix uses all these other additional threads that might not be easily identifiable with that. So those are the two things to keep in mind. The other thing is you can lower down the resolution of your previews. That often helps. And I found that often also people tend to just explode with the amount of inputs they have. And often people use inputs that still require a lot of work, or use virtual inputs and then like do these complex things where like they could just use a blank input and build it up from scratch. I've seen that help as well. So yeah, those are two things to keep in mind. The vMix that you see in Task Manager isn't the only process that's running for it. If you scroll down there, you will see the encoder, the NDI helper, all of those, and they might use a lot more CPU than you expect.
You know, you can also ask questions 24/7 at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, or it's right here at the QR code. So you can scan that, and it's fast and easy, nothing to sign up for, nothing to log into. Just askofficehours.global, put in your name, put in your question. We'll work it in over the next few shows. Next question.
From the QR code, Kent Madison, Ohio, are there any recommendations on a good video editing tablet? I use mainly Android devices, but I understand an iPad might be the answer, just not really familiar with iOS. I'm open to the best solution. Thanks.
Jonas?
I think the best solution is, I can't believe I'm saying this, is an iPad. And one of the reasons why that is, they have a really great app that you can use to get, you can use Resolve in the cloud. So if you need a lot of processing power and all that, use Resolve in the cloud. Use another device to get your mouse and keyboard in. But the iPad can work as a remote monitor where they stream the content in a really high quality down to your iPad. And the iPad does have a great monitor. That being said, if you use Resolve on the iPad, that's also an option. You can use the speed editor with it. But it does depend on what your editing is. are you working in Resolve? Then an iPad, I think, is probably the best device. I personally would put my instance in the cloud so it can render while you do something else. Or there's a whole slew of other editing apps. But that being said, if you want to use like Premiere Pro, you probably won't get that on an iPad until you use something for remote control of another device.
Alex?
I would say that you have three options really, as far as editing goes, which is Resolve, of course, which was what Jonas just talked about, as well as Final Cut and LumaFusion. And all of them are solid, and it really isn't about, for basic editing, it isn't really about, it's just about what you're most comfortable with, what makes the most sense. And what I would recommend is getting them. I don't know how expensive LumaFusion is, but the Final Cut, Resolve is, I believe, free. And then Final Cut is, I think, $5 a month, and then there's LumaFusion as well, and all of them, I think it's more of what you're comfortable with as far as an interface goes, and how you work and how quickly you would work on those. The nice thing about, I believe, Final Cut and Resolve is that if you start a file there, you can finish it on your desktop. So those are those files are transferable. So, and LumaFusion is really native to the iPad. It's always been built for the iPad, so it's very comfortable there. So those are some good options.
Go ahead, Bill.
I agree with all of that. Apple famously about 3 years ago decided that they were going to do a Final Cut version for the iPad specifically. In fact, it's called Final Cut for iPad. And they added a lot of things. And I think this was in response to the fact they realized that these M-series chips, particularly the most recent ones, are so fast. They had tremendous capability to do live on-screen things. And the iPad solution allows you to do things like use multiple iPhones into a multicam switching circumstance on an iPad that becomes kind of an end-to-end solution for quick event kind of work. And I think they're putting a lot of resources into this. So I think it's going to last for a while, be a really good solution over the course of time. And if nothing else, as Alex often mentions, technical debt can really slow down the development of things. And there's not much technical debt in that pipeline. It's all new chips. It's all clean code. They have a ton of engineering resources, and they're throwing them at that problem. So it's something that I'm really interested in investigating when I do my next revs as well.
And buy a keyboard and mouse. If you're going to do video editing, you're going to want the precision and that the mouse gives you. You're also going to want the keyboard shortcuts to switch between tools. It is amazing. If you've never edited video before and you're thinking about getting into it on a tablet, it will be like rocket fuel to put those keyboard shortcuts into muscle memory. So
I may push back a tiny bit on that, CJ,
Okay.
Only in this respect. I once had a young woman who was on a set of mine. She was trying to put some data in, and I was sitting there badly typing. She said, "Can I please do that?" And she was faster than I was on a regular keyboard with her thumbs on that. And I'm not saying that it's important to do that. I'm saying that people are natively capable of doing input differently. And with the pencil, Apple's Pencil, there may be somebody who's really good with writing or something like that has a way to interact and edit using new things. So I agree with you right now, and I'm 100% in your camp. I would never want to edit without a keyboard and a trackpad. That's my preferred setup. But I'm not going to say that's true of the next generation. I don't know what they're going to be doing out there.
I almost want like a tool palette. Like I can use my fingers, I can use the pencil for move stuff around the screen, but I need button systems. Like I'm in trim, I'm in cut, I'm in arrow. Like just let me fly around.
Bottom line is you do you. Whatever you work with, go for it.
Next question.
Hydro G. Gonzalez III in Washington, D.C. ZowieBox, ZowieBox, ZowieBox. How would you use them in a house of worship or a small award banquet scenario?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, these are basic hardware encoders. So this is what the ZowieBox, one of the ZowieBoxes that you can order there. And so basically, you'll have an HDMI in. I think that they may have an SDI version as well. And it is a basic encoder that will allow you to encode SRT, RTSP, RTMP, all the basic stuff that you HX3 for NDI that you can encode into it. Just remember that what the feature set looks like, and also, of all the controls that you have over it, as well as the quality of the H.264 or H.265 compression, varies with companies. When you pay a lot less, there's less there. So you just need to know that it's going to be an inexpensive encoder. You would build your entire production ahead of that. So you're just delivering a finished product to that little box and then have it send it to the internet. So that's how you would use it. It's just kind of the tail end. Typically, for almost everything that we do, we'd have two. So we'd have a primary and a backup that are going to two different ingest points, and there's as much diversity from their network as possible inside of the building that you're in.
Jonas?
It has so many uses because you can just use it as an encoder at the end, but also since we're talking about super budget here, you can plug in a webcam to it and get an HDMI or NDI feed out of that. If you use a high quality webcam for that, it might serve for a really nice in the middle of a table thing for something hidden. It also allows you to work as a decoder. So if you need to, for example, have an overflow room, it is relatively simple with this to have something streaming to it or use NDI on it to decode that onto HDMI or SDI. Also, what it does give you is the white strip that you see in front of here. It can light up as a tally. And the other cool thing is you can kind of use it to turn your cameras into NDI. You wouldn't want to use it for iMac because in this case, the encoder is way too latent for that. But what is cool is you put an Ethernet cable in. If that is PoE+, on the other side, you do get a 12-volt DC out, which should serve for a lot of cameras. So, for example, if you use Blackmagic Studio Micro G2, you could hook it up to this, and now you have a really neat and compact rig. It does also allow you some control over Visca and NDI. It's a tool in your tool belt. Like Alex said, the lower you go encoder-wise, sometimes the more or the less settings you get, because sometimes they just don't care about anything and just give you all of the settings, and then it feels like you are in a CLI, or they don't give you any settings at all. I think it's a pretty healthy medium for this one, but do keep in mind what you're paying for. But if this is what you have and the only thing you can afford, it does give you a lot of options.
Hey, fun fact. Did you know you can hang out with office hours on the weekends? We've got live-only shows on Saturday and Sunday. Saturdays are 1 hour Q&A just like this. But Sundays is a little bit different. It's our introspection show. We talk about office hours, talk about the industry, a little more philosophical. Super fun, but you got to be in Makana to watch it live. So go to officehours.global/join if you want to hang out with us on the weekend. Next question.
Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota. What is your hardware encoder of choice that you are using and why?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
We in our company are starting to use the KiloView E3, which you can see if I change to the correct view here. This is the interface that we can access. It has two different inputs. The HDMI can also input 4K, while the SDI is 3G only, so 1920 1080. It has a few quirks, but the newest firmware has been pretty stable for us. Though I have to say that we've had some issues running the Restream IO in RTMS as a secure version of that has been kind of out of sync. And I know other people also have spoken about the interface reporting everything is okay, but the actual feed is out of sync. So it's stable. It's kind of cold when running. It can encode to NDI feeds, and it's pretty easy to use, according to my colleagues at least.
Jonas?
I would do a famous Mickey quote. It depends. It depends on what your in and out is and what your budget is. Right now, my favorite encoder for REMI, remote, and cloud productions is the Makito X4. the big advantage is you can get up to 4 inputs. You can get 70/2110 inputs. You can get 1 4K or 4 full HD streams. But the cool thing is, while in the past we did like little tricks where you put them all into quadrants, you don't need to do it with this one. It is built on SRT, and it can give you the same encode multiple times. Another big advantage with this is the amount of audio channels you can have. So what you can do is on any of your 4 inputs, you can pull 16 audio channels out of that and then put them in audio encoders, and then you can mix and match video and audio encoders on the stream, which has been really neat for us, because then you can have 4 cameras, all of them have all the audio. And then the biggest feature is that you can also use SCI metadata. So you can jam NTP timesync or the timecode that is embedded into the SDI signal into the SCI metadata. And then, for example, Nimble Streamer for us in the cloud can read that. At that point, my latency from on-site to the cloud is fixed. Because what you do is you sync both the cloud and the on-site encoder to the same NTP data server, and then you say, how long is that going to take? Most of the time, I know like 300, 400 milliseconds is probably my SRT latency, and then I can add something on top of that. But at that point, all of those signals are locked, and I know that has a buffer there, and it's predictable. And people that have worked with me know that if I love one thing about SRT and how we build our things is predictability. They do have other solutions. Most of the time, what is important for me if I look at an encoder is I do want that H.265 and SRT, and being able to use pass frames and stream IDs with SRT. While we don't require that for most of our productions, you will run into some issues if like suddenly you need to stream to YouTube directly and you can't. And multi-channel also is nice. We are still using the Pearl Nanos from time to time, because they are what makes them really neat is they actually have an XLR input. I don't know how many encoders you know that you can actually just plug 2 XLRs in, but the Pearl Nano is probably one of the only ones I know, which helps us if we just ship an encoder to a production company, say, plug your SDI in, tell your audio engineer to give us 2 XLRs, and we're done. Yeah.
Alex?
Yeah, so I mean, my favorite one that I've used for many years has been the Elemental encoders. These are unfortunately they've moved them to orange frames in the front. You'll see the old green ones are here. So those are, and in those you can get up to 16 inputs at one time. And I think the newer ones will take up to 4 4K signals at 60 frames a second, and then you can send them out. I think that our record is. Because we'll build whole ladders inside of the Elementals, and so we would have a couple HDR frames, but we would be not a couple encode frames, and we'd be able to send out. I think our record is like 64 encodes from one appliance, and so now these are. I just want to make sure you didn't say price. So I used to joke that my 600s were Tesla 1 and Tesla 2 because I could have owned 2 Teslas, and my 700s were, or my 800s were Tesla or Ferrari 1 and Ferrari 2 because I could have owned 2 Ferraris instead of owning them. But I will say that we got a lot of work because those little banners on the front. That's one. The ones that I have here that I'm using for another rollout right now are these Monarch Edges. So this is, you can get it. These are E1 and E4s and D1 and D4s. Really powerful, and they have something that's similar to the Videons, which I'll talk about in a second, which is a Docker system. So there's a lot of customization. So beyond being able to just do the encodes, these allow you to customize those encodes and make them part of a larger ecosystem and build up a lot of your own things. In fact, in some cases, putting your own graphics and doing all kinds of other things. And so they're very powerful. We're using them so that we can encode into a cloud architecture, and then we're able to send out 4 signals, and all 4 signals can be the same, or it can be 4 different signals coming out of those. And if it's 4 of the same signals inside of the encoder, we can take one encode in and distribute it to 4 SDI outs. And so we're not using up more bandwidth to distribute it to a variety of different screens that are available there. One of the ones that we're using right now for our show, for some of the ancillary encodes, are these Videon Live Edges. I really like the cloud infrastructure for the Live Edge that's there. And we're looking at using some of the Videon Maxes to do some of our HDR. Of course, we're encoding the show that you're looking at today, I think, on a Talon. This is a Osprey Talon. And then finally, we did some testing with the Prism Flex, and it's the interface. You can run this whole thing from your iPhone. so as far as being able to encode it, so those are some of my favorites and they're all, again, different uses for different things. Depends on what you're trying to do. There's not really like any other camera or anything else we talk about on the show. As Jonas said before, and Mickey said many times, it depends on what you're trying to execute.
Jonas, real quick.
And one more that I'll do is the Broll Ultra encodes. They are cheap, below $1,000, have most of the features that you want. They have multiple audio channels, all of that, 2 streams, SCI metadata, and for $1,000, that is hard to beat. The encode quality is pretty good, and +1 also for the matroxes and being able to run Dockers on your encoders. That is really fun.
If you're finding office hours valuable, there are a few ways to help. You can like and subscribe to the channel, of course, but you can also donate. We're a nonprofit, so officehours.global/donate is where you do that, and we'd appreciate it. And there's always opportunity to volunteer, so you can sign up for officehours.global/volunteer. Check the information out. Next question.
Zach Stelsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Has anyone used Zoom on an Apple TV 4K? I just discovered this service.
Jason?
Yeah, I sure have, and it works quite well. My experience is that I think it's much better to have that experience than to be in a meeting with someone in that experience because of the continuity camera, and people don't tend to use headphones. So typical Zoom protocols apply. Use Ethernet if you're going to do this. Please use Ethernet, and it's not bad.
If you're trying to do this in more of a corporate environment with a conference room and things like that, there are Zoom Room appliances specifically for that. So they've kneecapped the Apple TV app a little bit from a functionality, and they don't make it quite as slick as it could be because they don't want to take away market from the more expensive stuff. Next question.
Bill Davis in San Diego. A couple of minutes ago, Apple announced that they've turned off data protection for the UK rather than comply with their backdoor data access mandate. Thoughts?
Jason?
Although I am disappointed in Apple and the whole situation is kind of rotten, I think I'm the only person that I know that actually has advanced data protection turned on and has for quite some time. This is not a backdoor. Apple has keys and ways to restore things, but in the interest of time, I'll leave it there.
Alex?
The problem you're going to see, and you're going to continue to see this go back and forth, is that you have politicians who are basically digital children. They barely know how to use email. They don't understand any of this stuff. And no matter what they sound like, they're 1 out of 10 might actually understand what TCP means. So they don't know what any of this stuff is. You just understand it's like a 12-year-old doing open heart surgery when they make laws of doing this stuff. They are being advised by intelligence agencies who want everything. And so they want access to everything. They want to know where you were yesterday afternoon, what room you were in, so that because they only get blamed when things go wrong. They don't care about your privacy. They don't care about your rights. They don't care about any of those things. All they want to do is make sure people don't die. And so and it's an understandable thing, but they're telling the politicians to do things that are really not, in line with what's good for us as individuals. And so you're ending up with these ham-fisted laws that are just idiotic, and so you see this popping up all over. You primarily see this in 5 countries. This is the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, and that's because these are the 5 eyes. The 5 eyes are the ones that really have the most advanced architecture for spying on us. And so the 5 eyes, you'll see the laws pop up where the intelligence agencies think that they can get the most traction. So they don't do it as much in the United States because it gets pushed down pretty quickly because people actually understand what they're looking at, not the politicians, but the people calling them and complaining to them. But if they feel like they can sneak it in, you'll see it pop up in New Zealand, pop up in Australia, pop up in Canada, pop up in the UK. Oddly, it's always popping up in the same places. so it's because they're trying to find, once they get it working in one place, it can theoretically invalidate all the places, because it opens up that, now if you're talking to anyone in the UK, you can't have the end-to-end encryption. So those are the things that we have to be vigilant about. I think Apple did the right thing, which is that if I can't protect you, we're not gonna try to do any of it. We don't want you to feel safe where you're not safe. And so I think that they did the right thing, given the ham-fisted, idiotic approach that the UK took.
Bill?
It was an interesting pragmatic thing. I saw the headline pass along, and it was a pretty big headline on this is on Apple Insider this morning. But going down, they listed a lot of things going on, including quotes from everybody. And to me, it was really interesting. I'd kind of wondered in part why Tim Cook was at the White House the other day. But it says on part down below in this article, certain other iCloud services will lose their encryption for users in the UK, including iCloud Backup, iCloud Drive, Photos, Notes, Reminders. I mean, these are things that touch people every day. So I think if there's going to be consumer backlash to all these machinations that Alex notes between politicians and things like that, you got to have some pain out there. And boy, it seems like the people in the UK are going to be suffering some data privacy pain until they settle this out, if they do settle it out.
And if you're like me and you are the IT support person for most of the people in your life, keep in mind that they're going to all hear that this thing called advanced data protection exists, and they're going to want to turn it on. So please advise them, make the recovery contacts, print out the key, put it in a safe deposit box, because now that it's news, it's going to be in the zeitgeist for a couple days, and some people are going to get locked out of stuff. I can just see it coming. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Jonas, can we get a demo of Watchbee for vMix?
Jonas?
Course. So Watchbee for vMix allows you to automatically sync a folder to your vMix list. So if we go here, we see we have a typical vMix input, and what you can do with Watchbee for vMix is, if you download it, it's precompiled on GitHub. You get this little exe file, you execute it, and the first time it's gonna just launch. It looks like a scary command line tool. It is not scary, but it is a command line tool. And then it's going to tell you a couple of things. Now you have a config file that is written here. You can open that up and change a bunch of parameters. You can say, where is your vMix URL? What folder should it watch? What is the name of the list? And what are the extensions it should include? So now if you go into media here, we have nothing there. So if I go to another folder and grab a couple videos quickly, I'm gonna open up the list here, and I'm gonna go here. Like that. I am gonna grab a couple videos here, and as soon as I paste them in here, you will see that it already loaded them. So they are now loaded. The advantage is that if you now go in and delete this one, it's also gonna recognize that.
So if this is on a network location, ostensibly anybody that has access to that network location could be feeding the playout operator who's got.
Exactly. And it also, like, if I rename this one, it removes it and adds it again, because what you had problems with in the past is if you rename it, vMix can't find the file anymore. So now it's going to fail, but you still see it correctly in your playlist. So it's really dangerous. This wasn't developed for a client, and I just made it open source.
So it'll remember the order that you have your playouts in, even if it goes through that renaming exercise?
No.
Okay, so it'll just append it to the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
So at least you're not calling something that doesn't exist.
ordering is something that is still hard to do because you have to delete everything and then add it in that order again. That's not something that you should just randomly do. But that is one of the things that is on the list to be able to say, sort it by this specific sort number or something.
It's really cool. Thanks, Jonas. And thanks to the whole panel for being here today. It's a privilege to spend my Friday morning getting smarter. Thanks for bringing all your life experience and helping us all get to the next step. Also, we have a big back-end crew working all the time, not only during the show to make it run, but also they help keep us organized, keep us moving forward. There's management councils that meet every single day so that we can keep getting better all the time. And thanks to the producers for asking so many great questions today. We had to send a bunch back, so if there were if you had a question in the QR code, we're still working that into the queue. If it is a Makana question, that'll be in your notes. So if you in a chat, go up to the hamburger menu, you can submit it next time you're on the show. Tsalala traversal today, 22,000 miles. That's 36,000 kilometers, 176 million bananas for scale. Thanks, everybody. See you in After Hours.
By the way, when I was answering that Thunderbolt question, I heard, let's just put it this way, I would look around mid-May from OWC for a product or two that may or may not just completely change that cluster thing I said.
Ooh, I see.
When I was asking the Bitfocus companion question during the CQ12 thing, I was on a minor version one step below what Alexander was. So everything is okay now. I can remote control.
I was right with you, Ron. I was looking at my companion. I was like, I don't see a CQ. I don't see a CQ. And then I upped. It's like, 352. I'm in.
Yeah. So we fixed
Tells you how
well.
fast everything changes in this industry.
There's a bunch of updates in 3.5 though, so make sure that you check anything that had a delay.
Yeah,
before.
be real careful.
Here's what we really know, though, and that is that Midjourney does not know that Osprey Talon is an encoder, because when you type in Osprey Talon, you just get the birds.
Oh, it's the Raptor wannabe thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, CJ. I think you misunderstood that. So what that does is it grabs your video frames and flies up to the cloud. It is actually the bird.
It rips it out of the lake.
It's really confusing. It's so confusing to clients because like there's
Dives into the data pool, grabs the data fish, just like Jonas is saying.
It's actually
drags it up to the cloud, flopping, and
then you have the sound.
Thanks, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Have a nice weekend,
the bird
everybody.
of prey.